The day is in the midst of a year-long look at affordable housing in the region. What specifically do you think the legislature should do to help people who can't afford to buy a home or who are struggling to rent an apartment?
Um, I think the larger part of this is kind of one of my key areas. Um, my district, I've had the opportunity to see its, evolution of change. The area that I've lived in, I've been blessed to live in the same house 30 years. And so I understand what hard work is. I understand we are a region that is still pulling ourselves up from the pandemic. Um, and so I think when we talk about affordable housing, it's a combination of things. I think we look at sitting down with the bank and financial institutions and how we can help mediate and mitigate families being able to access some of those programs where, at this point, some families are paying the same amount as they would if they had a mortgage. So what can we do to enhance those programs of a rent to own? I think that's, a big piece. I think the other part is that it comes down to us working with some of our cities and towns on affordability, what that looks like, looking at the housing stock. One of the things in Norwich has been, just as we're dealing with the commercial buildings, is there is an aging housing stock. And so someone that is getting a home in the my area of Norwich, there could be work that has to be done to that home. So I would say us looking at providing dollars to communities to do renovation programs, so helping some of these homeowners with that. And I think the third piece to that is realizing it's the area that I think no one really is looking at or touching too much, and that is our elderly and disabled. We have so many that don't want to move out of their homes, have worked so hard to get what they have, and so it's important that we figure out a program to help them with not only the renovations in their home, the fixed income that they're on, but a program that allows them to have the same rights and same opportunities as others when it comes to affordability and owning a home instead of possibly renting. But I think we have to look at the housing stock, how we can maintain it, and help those that are own apartment complexes and different things of that sort, enhance that so that our families and people are living in the best possible conditions, because good quality of life, good living conditions lead to a happier person, a happier group of individuals, and so it's along that lines of that beautification of a community comes the beautification and enhancement of housing stock and properties.
Connecticut recently enacted a law designed to provide safeguards against lawsuits for out-of-state patients seeking abortions in Connecticut and any providers who help them. Do you support efforts to make Connecticut such a safe haven?
So I am fully on board to helping keep Connecticut as a safe haven. I think one of the biggest things that we have to look at, and I tell individuals all the time, is you take the politics, religion, everything out of it. When we talk healthcare, well, we can't talk choice for some things and not choice for others. As a male, I should not be the one that dictates and tells an individual female what to do with her body. Women go through so much with childbearing; they go through so much just health related, and so to be a male and dominate the conversation of telling a woman that she cannot do something is scary. Times are they should be allowed to do what's necessary for their own well-being. And so that conversation should be between the woman and her doctor. And there should be provisions not only to safeguard it, but there should be the safeguards as well to make sure that there are health care insurances take care of making sure things like this are covered. It's really as simple as that. We can't talk about where the land of the free and opportunity and choice and things of that sort, and then we want to restrict choice, which then becomes options. So, when we're talking this issue, it's about making sure that a woman feels safe enough to go out, a provider feels safe enough to provide the options of choice for a woman when she's going through such a tough time. Pregnancies aren't easy. I'm not a woman, but pregnancies are not easy, and so they need to make sure and know that they have the resources, the options, and most importantly, the safeguards to making sure that they can make those decisions for what's best for them.
The state surplus has grown to over $4 billion. Do you support the decision to use some of that to lower the state's pension debt, or do you think more should be returned to the taxpayers?
I think, it was smart for them to use the pension to lower our pension debt. That's something that we as taxpayers, as lawmakers, have to realize it's got to be taken care of at some point. When you go through a time as we're going through now, and you have the opportunity to catch up on areas where we've lagged before, I would say I praise the Democratic leadership of both the House and Senate in this last session being bold. I look at, me sitting on the city council in Norwich. We went out and it passed last year in the referendum about a pension liability bonds plan. And so I think when you can get your house in order from that standpoint, to making sure that employees who have done the hard work in the state of Connecticut for the state of Connecticut are taking care of it, it's important. So, I think at a time when they have the surplus and they've used it to pay down that debt, that's huge. That allows and frees up other areas in the budget for them over the coming years to be able to do things that will return some of those favors and dollars to the taxpayer. But I think if we continue to kick the can down the road, we then don't help the taxpayers down the road. So I think, taking care of the pension now and continuing to do what's right for the employees who have worked hard for the state of Connecticut is important, and it will pay dividends for taxpayers as it did with the $600 million worth of tax cuts that the state passed this past session.
How should Connecticut move forward to address climate change with regard to electric vehicles, wind power, and other clean energy initiatives, strategies?
So I think, again, this is one of those areas where it's about being bold and realizing that there is data and information out there about the effects of some of the practices we have that affect our overall environment and about taking care of it. I think one of the biggest things that we can see is providing alternatives can be very rewarding. I think, continuing to go with the electric cars and wind power and things of that sort will help us clean up some of the air and will also help us move into a more technological age of how we run things. But I think the other big part to this is finding alternatives that overall help us mitigate some of the damage that we continue to do to the environment that is causing stronger storms, rougher storms, and eroding the place that we live are important. So I'm in favor of exploring all of the options when it comes to renewable energies and looking at them from a cost prohibitive measure as well, and how they could affect individuals. I think it's also about being bold and strategic with new new construction projects and giving them incentives for trying to get away from the more harmful types of energy. So I think it's that balance of, as people continue to do things to enhance their businesses, their corporations, as we have new construction happening across the state, we put in safeguards as well, again, and incentives to those that are willing and ready to take on doing things in our communities that are going to change our environment and community for the better, and overall help to live a healthier lifestyle for some of our younger generations.
Do you think the 2020 election was conducted fairly and Joe Biden won? Do you support early voting and the vote by mail initiatives?
So the 2020 election was definitely completely handled correctly. I consider Joe Biden our president of the United States. He won fair and square. I sit here, and I tell individuals all the time, if it came down to where individuals felt that they always lost an election and that they could disrupt systems, there would be issues. I've sit here, I lost my very first election. And, regardless of the outcome, it's just like playing a sport or anything else. You accept the loss and you come back and regroup and work with your team as to whether you come back for battle again or do you move forward in a different area. I am totally on board for early voting. It's one of those things as we move into the 21st century of how we do business. Voting is not, it's something that's a civic duty. And as more and more small families, single families are on the go, and we want them to be more active in our communities. We want them to be engaged in their kids' lives. But also we know that the climate of our workforce and industries have changed. We need to provide opportunities for individuals not to just vote on one day, but multiple if possible. I think it's important for us to look at the options. It can be done safely. It's been done safely in other states where they have early voting. I think it's amazing. I've always been for the notion of providing ample opportunity for individuals to vote. I'm all in favor of the mail process when it comes to absentee balloting. It shouldn't be about hindering individuals when it comes to voting, because there are safeguards in place in the state of Connecticut that allow for individuals to do it right. And when we're questioning the system that has existed for so long as it being a fraudulent system, there's a problem. We conduct amazing elections. I commend the hard work that each election worker, moderator, registrar of voters, clerk, tender, every position in a polling place, every person in a city clerk's office and a registrar's office, the work that they do to make sure that our elections are upheld with integrity, I commend them. And so to make, more individuals allowed the opportunity to vote, even if that meant early voting as well, it would be amazing. Better turnout. We would be able to hear more voices. And those that we normally wouldn't, and I say it all the time being a council member, I say the more opportunities we can give individuals to be engaged in the process, engaged in having a voice, the more they feel valued. And so these are ways that those that we know are on the go, working 2 and 3 jobs, having commitments of their families, and not able to make it possibly to the polling place, this is an opportunity for them to be able to hear their voice and feel valued. The more votes we have that are coming in, the more we are able to know what truly is what the community is feeling. Who do they want to represent them? And so I'm fully on board for early voting, and I'm definitely fully on board for mail-in ballots.
Last question. Route 82 construction is the biggest controversy in the 46th district. Would you support ways in which the legislature could ensure that the businesses affected are made whole, and that and that they are compensated for their losses, both physically and in business losses?
So I think so I will say one of the biggest things with the Route 82 project is it's far from being a done deal. You know, one of the biggest parts to this controversy is the design phase is only at a 30% design phase. And so one of the biggest parts that I tell individuals is it's my job to make sure that we encourage the DOT to submit a design, to work with the community to submit a design and a final design that has the least amount of impact on our community on that route. I tell people, I take this issue since the beginning. I understand it. One of the groups that I think sometimes is missed in this conversation with Route 82 are those that have had to deal with fatalities. I tell people, I know what it feels like to go through losing someone due to a fatal accident. I lost my twin brother. And so I tell individuals, it's that emotional damage that I don't think any dollar amount will ever make those families whole. So we know that something has to be done to that route. Is 6 roundabouts the answer? Absolutely not. I don't think anybody is saying 6 roundabouts is the answer. I've always said we need to look at all of the options, and we still have time. I mean, they're only at a 30% design phase. But aside from the construction piece, I think no matter what design, whether it's raised medians down the entire Route 82, adding lanes, whatever design they do, construction will disrupt business some way, somehow on that corridor. And so beyond just those properties that could possibly be acquired for whatever construction they end up with, they need to be made whole. The other part that I would fight for as a state representative of the 46th district would be a pot of money set to the side that would be more of business tax impact money. And so these are those businesses as they're doing the construction on Route 82. And it doesn't have to be roundabouts. This could be adding lanes. It could be doing a raised median. Whatever design they finally come up with, if they have to do construction, the profit loss that some of these businesses will see, which could possibly make it harder for them to pay their tax bill to the city, the state should also assist in making sure that they're able to be made whole on that end. They still have livelihoods, they still have families, they still have employees that they have to meet. But also, we want to know with whatever design they come up with a year, 2 years, or 3 years from now, when the construction happens, we need to make sure that those businesses are able to sustain during that duration. So it would be my job as a state representative, beyond just making any business whole, would be making sure that there is enough money set aside for the entire corridor that could be impacted by whatever change happens. But I think the first conversation that we are having and need to continue to have is on what the design looks like. No one is saying 6 roundabouts. We know that, being on the city side right now, the city has some obligations. The state will have obligations for maintenance and things of that sort. But whatever design happens, there must be continued to be voices of the council, our state, the DOT, and most importantly, the community. I think everyone understands that 6 roundabouts is a lot. And we've got work to do before we get to a bid process. And it's incumbent on making sure while that conversation happens in the legislature, I'm doing all that I can to make sure that there's money not only set aside for business acquisitions, which the state always takes care of, but on top of that, any and all businesses on Route 82. And I would say even in that pot of money, if a business did decide to relocate to another area, they should be considered in that language to be able to touch that pot of money for impact, because it could end up the property that they're at now has a higher tax. The property that they're in, they need additional help with marketing to continue to let people know where they've moved to. So there are a lot of moving parts that we must look at. But as a state representative, my job would be making sure there is money earmarked aside for tax impact for Route 82 and business loss. And so that's a huge focus of mine, because I'm not trying to take anybody's livelihood away. And I think that the second part to that is working on the design. And if we can come to a design that is a happy medium for everyone on Route 82, that's the true compromise and win. And that's the part that we continue to have to fight and work. But just because individuals voted yes on certain things doesn't mean that the project as is what we want to go forward with. We know there's work to be done. I know that there's work to be done, and I'm willing, and I've already said it, to sit at the table, roll up my sleeves, and come up with whatever designs we can that minimize the impact of roundabouts being built on that corridor. And so we've got to look at all options. We've got to look at costs, but more importantly, we've got to look at the tax impact and how we can sustain some of these businesses that are rightfully nervous about whatever happens on Route 82. And we've got time. The earliest that any construction would happen is 2024. So we have work to do between now and then to secure funding to the side for businesses, and more importantly, continue to talk about the design.